When I said this to Justin before the show, he said, "What?"
Mm.
But that's because Justin's ignorant.
I wouldn't particularly rate him, but I guess that's why you've considered him for this answer, because he's
Exactly,
not
Justin.
rated. There you go.
Exactly.
And I remember a conversation that we had around the time George Thorne actually signed, and you said he would go on to play for England. And that's how highly rated he was.
Still regarded as a Swansea legend to this day. The reason why he's not more well known is because his career was just destroyed by injury.
This is one of those games that's always on Sky Sports Football. You know, those 15-minute highlight shows, it's always on. And it's just pure chaos.
The scariest manager for me is, without a doubt, Nigel Pearson. Someone who still gives me the heebie-jeebies when I watch him in press conferences to this day.
Yes, Felix Magath is a strange guy. He's clearly going to bring the cheese to the dinner party as well, which is a massive, perk for me. I like cheese.
There you go. There is zero evidence that today is Sunday. We are all kind of relying on the fact that someone has kept an accurate count ever since the first one ever. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Stopwatch. This week, because it's the international break, we decided we're going to dip into the archives and dedicate the whole show to some second-tier retro action. It's always my favourite part of the show anyway, so I'm glad we're going to be doing 5 questions about it instead of just the one, Justin. As always, it's the Championship show with a little twist. It's 5 topics, a 2-minute timer, and 2 hosts. Ryan, Justin, from the Second Tier Podcast. Let's get right into it. Justin, here's an interesting one for you. Who is the most underrated striker in Championship history?
Yeah, quite a few came to my mind. I was immediately going to go with Chris Martin because he's a player that doesn't get a lot of recognition. But actually going into a bit more detail, I'm going to stick my neck out and say Lewis Grabban. I think I've said this before, but actually Lewis Grabban's goal record is quite incredible. And looking into the stats, he's made 279 appearances and scored 112 goals. It's a better games per goal ratio and a better games per minute ratio than Billy Sharp's, who's obviously the record goal scorer. So I've got to say Lewis Grabban, and he's virtually done it wherever he's been in teams that haven't done well. Yeah, he was on loan at Sunderland and scored a hatful of goals before going to Villa that season and actually finished with 20 goals. And obviously Forest, he's been playing in poor teams and still managed to score goals for Forest as well. So yeah, he's done it wherever he's been. Yeah, quite an incredible goal record for a player who doesn't get much recognition at all.
There aren't many strikers who have been as consistently brilliant in front of goal as he has over the years, has there?
No.
I don't think anyone else really sticks out in my mind, really. Someone who's had the longevity. Think of people like Jordan Rhodes, for example, who were amazing in front of goal, but then they dropped off eventually. Grabban's just kept going throughout the years, hasn't he? The person I'm going for is Darius Henderson. And to show you how underrated the striker is, when I said this to Justin before the show, he said, "What?" But that's because Justin's ignorant. Out of all the players who have played in the Championship, 17 have scored more than 80 goals across all of Championship history. Only 6 more have got a better goals per game ratio than Darius Henderson. Over the course of his career, he's had 5 seasons where he's got double figures, and he's just ticked over very nicely in front of goal. His goal record is actually pretty decent for someone who's played a lot of Championship games over the years, and he's also very good at elbowing people in the face when he's going up for headers. So I think Darius Henderson is someone who's a bit underrated, particularly by the likes of Justin Peach.
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much answered what I was going to say, or said what I was going to say. I wouldn't particularly rate him, but I guess that's why you've considered him for this answer, because he's not rated. There you go.
Exactly. That's what underrated means. Justin, what's next topic?
So on the other side of things, who do you think's been the biggest waste of talent the second tier has ever seen?
I would go for someone Championship fans may not be too familiar with. I'm going with Ferry Bodie, who used to play for Swansea in the mid-noughties. A wonderful player. He scored 1 goal from the halfway line, and it's not just scoring goals from the halfway line in just terms of his pure technical ability. He was such a wonderful player, and he's still regarded as a Swansea legend to this day. The reason why he's not more well known is because his career was just destroyed by injuries. There aren't too many players whose careers has been destroyed by injuries as much as his, but he was a fantastic player when he was actually 100% fit. Every Swansea fan, who saw him play will tell you how talented a boy he was. So what are your memories of Bodie, Justin?
Well, there was a transfer saga with my club Derby in the summer of 2008 where he was about to join, and I don't know whether he failed his medical or terms weren't agreed, but it seemed to go on for a hell of a long time. And then shortly after that, the start of his knee injuries, yeah, they started to happen. And as I say, it was just a huge shame that he wasn't able to fulfill his potential, because he was such an incredible player, a gifted player, and a highlights reel, just a human highlights reel. He was absolutely brilliant. Nothing spectacular or sexy or technical. His passing was brilliant. He could shoot. Very good midfielder. Just the all-round package.
Yeah, definitely. Who have you gone for as biggest waste of time?
Yeah, someone in a similar sort of vein as to Ferry Bode. I've gone with George Thorne. Obviously, he was at Derby, and I've never seen a player transform a good team the way he did when he came in on loan during the 2013-14 season. Had to bide his time until John Eustace got injured, but he came in, slotted in, and actually improved the team tenfold. In his range of passing, a bit like Ferry Bode, was absolutely incredible. And I remember a conversation that we had around the time George Thorne actually signed, and you said he would go on to play for England. And that's how highly rated he was. And unfortunately, he did his ACL the following summer when he signed permanent for Derby. And he struggled with injuries from there. And he got going again in 2015-2016 season, but then broke his leg. And things seemed to get worse for him from that point. It was such a shame because, as I say, he could have been an incredible footballer. And he's a really nice guy as well. And he's very honest. And the interviews that he's done since have really opened the eyes for a lot of supporters who have followed his career.
I think any Derby fan who saw him around that time will completely agree with me. He was destined to be a Premier League player, maybe even play for England eventually if it just wasn't for the injuries. Justin, what is your favourite ever game that the Championship has produced?
I mean, there are many, and I've tried to avoid playoff games because I'm sure we'll do a playoff special at some point. But I've gone with Aston Villa 5, Nottingham Forest 5, and this is one of those games that's always on Sky Sports Football. You know, those 15-minute highlight shows. It's always on, and it's just pure chaos. Tammy Abraham scored 4 goals. Joe Lolly got 4 assists. Lewis Grabban scored a couple of goals in that game. João Carvalho scored as well. There was a red card. It was just, I'm just looking at it now. The stats in this game just absolutely incredible. And for a game on a Wednesday night to finish 5-5 is just remarkable in any league.
My main memory of that game is Oya Nylands, the Villa goalkeeper, having an absolute mare for most of the goals. He did not have a good game that day, but luckily he was bailed out by the forwards in that game. My favourite game in Championship history is Birmingham City 4, Leeds United 5. Obviously a goal fest in itself, but it wasn't too remarkable up until the 83rd minute. It was 3-2 up until that point. Leeds had gone 2-1 up. Birmingham managed to pull it back before Leeds went ahead again. And then Birmingham equalised. And then a minute later, Leeds went ahead again. And then Birmingham equalised again in the 91st minute. Every Leeds fan there probably thought, right, that's it. We've just dropped 2 points there when we've been ahead 3 or 4 times at that point. I'm losing track as I say it. And then Wes Harding goes and scores an own goal for Birmingham and Leeds run out in the 95th minute. It's one of those games where you just... it was a roller coaster of emotions, especially for all the Leeds fans there who thought their team had thrown it away on numerous occasions in that. Justin, let's move on. Who is the scariest boss to have ever graced the second tier? That was actually your topic, but I'm taking your thunder away from you.
It's okay. I'll jump straight in. There's a couple that spring to mind. Valérien Ismaël had this terrifying glare at officials that did intimidate me. But the manager I'm going to go Roy Keane, just because of his reputation. And obviously he was manager at Sunderland, turned their season around remarkably. I think they were bottom when he took over and they won the league. and then obviously he was manager at Ipswich, where it didn't quite work out for him. But just the reputation he brought to the Championship, he's a scary guy. You've only got to watch Sky Sports Retro to understand how scary he is. And there's a certain midfielder who might agree with me on that point as well, who had many run-ins with him throughout his career. So I'll go with Roy Keane. It's a difficult one, that one, but I'll go with Roy Keane.
Nothing else to add, particularly. The scariest manager for me is, without a doubt, Nigel Pearson. Someone who still gives me the heebie-jeebies when I watch him in press conferences to this day. It's just the glare that he has and the utter discontent that he has for journalists who dare ask him any questions. I hardly ever see any journalists say or criticise something about the way he's managed the game, because you just know that you're going to get one hell of a snappy response if you do cross him in the wrong way. And he's also got this kind of, error about him that if you do cross him, he will snap you in half. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, some of his post-match interviews this season, and bear in mind, Bristol City have shipped a lot of late goals after being in leading position, so he's not going to be in the best of moods. And they are quite scary. It's a bit like your dad telling off your friend, and you just stood there like, okay, this is happening. This is a bit weird. This is a bit scary. And also James MacArthur, again, a player who might lean into the fact that, Nigel Pearson is quite a scary guy after getting being a victim of a headlock from Pearson during a live game.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned ostriches. Justin, because I stole your thunder for the last question, you can ask me what the next topic is, or the final topic even.
Of course. If you could have one person from Championship history as a dinner party guest, who would it be?
I am without a doubt going for Rob Earnshaw, someone who may not stand out for fans of Championship football and think he's an obvious case, but it's mainly because he's become somewhat of a philosopher since retiring from the game. And I'll just give you an example from some of the tweets that he's posted over the past few years. What if plants and trees are actually farming goods, giving us oxygen till we eventually decompose, and then he can consume us? It's an interesting thought. And then this other one was, there is zero evidence that today is Sunday. We are all kind of relying on the fact that someone has kept an accurate count ever since the first one ever. It's just mind-boggling things like this, Justin, that I just want to have a chat with him and discuss with him over a nice stew. Bring him round to dinner and we'll talk about the many philosophical things that he's just thought of on a daily basis. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, it's a lot of profound things being brought up. I think that would be a great conversation. But I've gone with Felix Magath, and this was literally the first guy that came to my head. Ex Fulham manager Felix Magath. I think he was only in the Championship for about 3 or 4 months before he was sacked. But the guy he was a strange man, a really strange man. I'm going back to Breda Hangeland, who was at Fulham, and he had an injury, and Felix Magath told him to go to the nearest Tesco to buy a large block of cheese to then perch on the end of a massage table and spend the afternoon in that position with a slab of cheese carefully positioned on said sore spot. Now, I'm not a physiologist. I'm not a physio. I don't know anything about sports science. I don't think that will work. But yes, Felix Magath is a strange guy. He's clearly going to bring the cheese to the dinner party as well, which is a massive, perk for me. I like cheese.
There you go. Well, I spoke to David Stockdale last year, and that's one of the stories that I always assumed was probably a bit of a myth, but he confirmed that it was actually true. And he also looks a bit like Danger Mouse's psychic.
Penfold.
Just throwing that in there as well. That's the one, yeah. And there we go. Another episode of the Stopwatch wrapped up for the week. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Drop us a like if you enjoyed, and please subscribe for more content like this. We've been the Second Tier Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Second Tier Pod. I'm Ryan Dilks1. That's Justin Peach 27, and I will leave you with this tweet by Robert Earnshaw. It's my birthday, and it made me think the hospital I was born in is the only building I've left but never entered. Something for you to think about there. Thank you for watching.